British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is gearing up for the next election campaign, setting the tone with a keynote speech that closed his ruling Conservative meeting today in Manchester. Let's listen.
30 years of vested interest standing in the way of change. 30 years of rhetorical ambition which achieves little more than a short-term headline. And why? Because our political system is too focused on short-term advantage, not long-term success. Politicians spent more time campaigning for change than actually delivering it. It doesn't have to be this way. I won't be this way. Conference, our mission is to fundamentally change our country.
This year's conference was marked by lack of support, though, with many empty seats in the House and several controversies as well, including the scrapping of a high-speed rail project. We're going to talk more about this now with Dr. Philip Catney, a political analyst, joining me live from Keele in the UK. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us. Rishi Sunak, first of all, going to be out of a job next year unless he can persuade his Conservatives and the country that he represents change. Do you think he's able to do that?
That's certainly how he's pitched his tent today with his speech. He's talked about 30 years of political system failure. Some might date it a bit differently to that, but he's trying to project himself as trying to take those unpleasant and palatable decisions for the long-term benefit. That's the catchphrase he's using. That was pretty much similar to how John Major's government in the 1990s did it, and they had a catastrophic defeat. So it looks, and the Conservative Party is behaving like they've lost the next election. Mr. Sunak is now trying to rebuild the Conservative Party's economic reputation by suggesting that they've got a longer-term proposal. And in this speech, he's tried to set out some of these ideas.
Also, this conference has been overshadowed by this impending decision over the high-speed 2 railway, HS2. Sunak has just confirmed the cancellation of the northern leg of the project. Tell us a bit more about that and all the controversy that was surrounding that.
Right, well, this idea for a high-speed rail link really goes back to the Channel Tunnel, but you can date it more recently to 2009, an idea of connecting London with the north of England. Initial proposals were suggested around £37 billion was the cost. It's ballooned spectacularly. It's at least 100 billion, possibly some analysts say as much as 150 billion pounds. The costs are out of control. Mr. Sunak has there'd already been a decision that one branch of it that goes from Birmingham to Yorkshire would be cancelled, and now he's confirmed the second wing, the second leg up to Manchester will also be cancelled. And this has angered many in the north of England because they feel that a lot of money was spent around London, the Euston area. A lot of money has been spent taking it up to Birmingham, and the benefits that were claimed and promised are not there after spending an awful lot of public money on this. And Mr. Sunak, in his speech, did acknowledge that there were mismanagement in terms of the handling of parts of the development around London in particular. So he's trying to reduce, and he's handed various local transportation schemes to try and offset some of the anger, but there's very real anger. And numerous times in his speech, he name-checked Andy Street, who is the mayor for the West Midlands, Birmingham, Greater Birmingham area, basically, who's threatened to quit the Conservative Party over this decision. So it's been a controversial one. However, having said that, opinion poll data, the most recent one, actually says a slight narrowing for the Conservatives on the basis, it seems, of people being quite happy with his position on net zero policies and HS2.
That's interesting because the Conservative Party is still trailing far behind Labour. How is that going to play out in the next election?
Not very well. We would expect some narrowing of the polls as the election comes closer and the realistic prospect of a Labour government comes into sight. Some people might get nervous and might start to turn away, but the Conservatives are so far behind, 20 points, just under 20 points now in the polls. In the electoral system in the UK, that can very much punish a party. And the Conservatives, probably this time next year, slightly later this time next year, they will be hurt very badly in that election. It's almost inconceivable that they're going to win this election now. Mr. Sunak is making decisions now, possibly with the eye to shaping future policy when they're out of office, possibly because he hopes these are last-ditch attempts to try and salvage what's left of the Conservative Party's economic reputation.
Well, what about the increasing divisions within the Conservative Party? I mean, we are seeing more and more echoes of what we see in the far right in the United States, even things like fake news, extremist positions. Do you agree that the UK is becoming more like the American far right?
It's definitely taking many of the positions of the American Republican Party. So at the conference yesterday, the Home Secretary Sarah Bradman came up with an incendiary speech around the floods of migrants coming to the country. Language that was deliberately, I think, calculated to sound like Enoch Powell's speech in the 1960s. There's very much her positioning herself to be Sunak's successor and to take the Conservative Party when it goes into opposition to the right. They're already on the right. This is potentially a jerk to the right once they lose power. So I think there is a real potential here that the Conservative Party is going down a very Trumpian direction in terms of what they said. Already we've seen ministers who have seemed to be relatively mainstream saying things that are simply not true. It's post-truth. It's not true for what they're saying about the things they've avoided the country having. So they are very much descending into the realm of fantasy, like the American Republican Party is. And it's not clear if the British public have got an appetite for that kind of politics just yet.
So what does this mean for the more moderate traditional Conservatives? Are they now fighting for the very soul of their party?
Well, you have to remember a lot of them were kicked out by Boris Johnson in 2019 when he wanted to purge the party of people who disagreed on Brexit. So the Conservative Party is now, to a degree, baked into a right-wing position. The MPs who seem to be the principal audience that the various potential contenders are appealing to are themselves probably the most right-wing Conservative Party we ever had. Now, the question is, does the grassroots of the Conservative Party start to put forward moderate candidates with a nuanced position on the European Union, migration, these other net zero, these other issues which seem to be big divisions inside the party? At the moment, the party doesn't seem to be hugely divided on the culture war issues they're fighting because it is so narrow now. And that's precisely why the Conservative Party is really going to struggle in the next election in the next few years, because they're appealing to a shrinking demographic. And it's not even clear that people in the UK are as animated as they perhaps think about these culture war issues.
All right, Philip, thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us. Philip Catney speaking to me there live from the UK.